Welcome back, everyone. This is part 14 on what if the Transformers were in high school. DXD. I do not own the Transformers and DXD or any of the characters in this video. Chapter 8. Hidden Autobot Base, Kuo Town Outskirts, 5:42 p.m., Tokyo Standard Time. Your choice. Science. Optimus Prime was observing an experiment being run by Jetfire and Perceptor. The two scientists were testing out a new weapon that Perceptor has been working on for several years. Optimus, as hopeful he is, doubted this will work. A weapon that is supposed to be harmless to organic life and detrimental to cybernetic life. Perceptor came up with the idea some time ago after many repeated hostage situations with the Decepticons. He hoped this may discourage the Decepticons from taking hostages. But Optimus saw the downside to this idea if it worked. Because if the Decepticons holding hostages no longer works, then what's stopping them from outright killing innocent people to distract the Autobots? Perceptor didn't give up, and while Wheeljack had initially helped with the creation of the weapon, it always seemed to blow up in their faces. Wheeljack became preoccupied with other projects, so Perceptor thought to ask Jetfire for help, as he was quite an engineer. Optimus simply watched as Perceptor said in his data logs. Test for 19. After rerouting the Energon transit actuators to the base telematter transponder, energy performance has increased by 12%. Jetfire's contributions on weapon engineering, from his prior work in the Seekers, proved most helpful in the process, also doubling the ammo magazine capacity. Now we are certain the modifications are successfully integrated, and as such, the weapons test can commence. Jetfire sighed as he propped up the test organic matter, and said to himself, I may be a scientist and a former Seeker, but I'm no weapons engineer like Wheeljack or Brainstorm. It seems lately my best strengths these days have been my flying and my firepower, instead of my chosen field of expertise. Perceptor asked the huge Autobot. What was that? Jetfire. Did you say something? Nothing, Perceptor. I'm fine, just feeling under the weather a bit. Jetfire replied immediately, not letting Perceptor know any wiser. Perceptor didn't hear Jetfire all that well, but Optimus did, and he felt sorry for his old friend. The test initially began without a hitch, but it quickly became a failure as the modifications didn't work as they should. For the first two shots, it seemed like a success, but the organic component used for the test quickly disintegrated. From further evaluations, it seemed the mods only made this weapon twice as strong as intended. Perceptor optimistically said, well, we have found 419 ways to not create this weapon, an infinite number of other possibilities to go. Optimus sighed as he was just about to talk with Perceptor, but then Bulkhead rushed in, saying, Optimus, we have a situation. Optimus, Perceptor, and Jetfire immediately got running to the control room as the base's alarms suddenly blared alive. Autobots in the base suddenly dropped what they were doing and went rushing to the main computer. The same could be said with any of the Autobot superhero allies present at the base. Optimus was somewhere in the middle, arriving time-wise as he asked, Ratchet, what is the problem? Ratchet was at the console with a few Autotrooper Transformers there as well. The old medic answered his leader. We are receiving reports from the underworld. The Decepticons have launched another attack. This time, in a densely populated area in the underworld. What? Jetfire exclaimed. How in the name of Primus did they get past our security sensors and the Devil's heightened security? Phoenix territory, the underworld. 5 minutes earlier, dance to the death. Kingdom Hearts EI. Sean had finished training Issy for the day, as the Apai Dragon being exhausted is any indicator. Rosa and Riaz objected strongly against the two continuing more after the injuries they sustained a few hours earlier, but the two men insisted that they continue a little longer. We may have to try something else to get you better at your ability to react in an instant. Sean thought as he helped Issy up onto his feet. Well, what can you do to get me to do? That, Issy replied, to which Sean answered, muscle memory takes several years to get accustomed to, even longer to use it in high-intensity combat. Unless you were already practicing martial arts from an early age and haven't stopped since, we could have circumvented some of that time to develop your reflexes to the levels we desired. Considering what you have told us broadly, how would you know any better? You're just as new to this as I am, Issy said. Rosa hesitantly replied to Issy's comment. Not exactly true, I'm afraid. He actually has millions of years of experience to perfect that trick. But that is due to complicated time physics that only Dialga, the god of time, can understand. Ria's interest was piqued as she asked, really? I'd like to hear more about this thing regarding time. Windblade answered for the female Pokemon trainer, while also keeping Wheeljack's mouth shut as she decided to explain it instead of him. From what I've heard, it's a quirk involving time travel with Dialga as the catalyst. There was something he called a personal timeline where, he basically simplified that. If you travel past this personal timeline in the past, you effectively become semi-immortal or something like that. You won't age a day and can live for eons, but you are susceptible to getting killed regardless. Wheeljack added, it is an interesting quirk because Dialga is what one might call a transcendent being, existing in the past, present, and future simultaneously. He's the only one who can move freely through time, and his way of time travel is apparently the proper way. He could cancel out any other time travel methods by just being near him, and he's the one who handles all the loops that make time travel, even as a scientific impossibility, so astronomically dangerous. Sean clarified, trust me when I say it is not something you want to experience, especially since the only way you can have that happen is if you're trapped in the age of dinosaurs. I was already losing my sanity for the first 10 years alone in the Mesozoic, and because of what can be best described as a glitch, I remained there for 60 million more, jumping through vortexes created by Dialga to at least get me going to attempt to return to the present. Rosa added with a hint of sadness. Dialga and his sister, Palkia, did everything they can to ensure Sean came back to the present without any complications. But I overheard them once on how once he spent 50 years of that 60 million, he lost his mind to the point he was basically an animal. Wheeljack was about to say something, but then a faint explosion sounded off, with fairly strong gusts of wind nearly knocking all the non-transformers off balance. What the hell was that? Bumblebee said through the radio, which Windblade transformed into her plane mode and took to the air. King Cold. Best of Dragon Ball Z Vol. 1. Windblade was a good 29 meters in the air when she saw a huge plume of smoke a great distance from the Gremory estate. The city speaker of Caminus could see through her special instruments that the smoke was from many burning buildings. Said buildings had telltale signs of being destroyed by weapons of war. And sure enough, her concerns were well-founded, as she saw a sizable number of Decepticons launching the attack, with more than 3 times that number consisting of Eggman's Decepti-drones and Insecticons. Windblade uttered quietly, which Wheeljack heard and asked, what was that about Insecticons? Windblade, Insecticons. Zenobia shuddered in disgust at hearing that name again. Why are you talking about those things? Windblade landed with a thud as she reported. I don't know how, but the Decepticons are launching a large attack some 87 clicks due east from this spot, Riaz exclaimed with surprise. What? How did they get past the security we set up? Sean had an aha moment and said, the Darkhold. How did I forget they had that book in their possession? Wheeljack chimed in. Of course, given the nature of the underworld and the other dimensional pockets of this reality, how could I have not foreseen that the Decepticons couldn't have used the Darkhold to find hidden ways here that we otherwise couldn't detect? DOO2 added with a deadpan voice and expression. Basically, it is a whole it is so brilliant that I am ashamed I did not think of it myself kind of deal you were gonna say next. Wheeljack rubbed the back of his head and before he could reply, Swoop soared into the training arena and said, what the hell are you guys waiting for? Cruddy Fruger. We got a situation if you recall. Grimlock and Skylynx are already on their way to help out the Autobots and that Spider-Man guy is already there. Let's get a move on people. Sean immediately took command of the situation and ordered, right, B, Windblade, / and DOO2, you 4 go with Swoop to that heavily populated area and take Gremory's team with you to help get innocent civilians out of danger. Wheeljack, you, Twilight, and Rosa will start a safe zone for the citizens to evacuate to. First aid is with me. We're on rescue work for anyone trapped, whether by debris or by enemies. You're the medical personnel, and I'm your muscle / bodyguard. This scale of invasion usually means a combiner is present on the battlefield. Yes, sir. Everyone minus Rosa, and the Kuo town residents saluted, causing Zenobia to ask, who put Hashimoto in charge? The Autobots already started leaving as Twilight answered while she and Rosa got into Wheeljack's vehicle mode. Sean does come from a prominent military family back in his reality, and he's proven tactical enough for most of us to just follow his lead because he's a good strategist, especially if Megatron and Onslaught acknowledge Sean as their strategically minded equal. Wheeljack added, which soundly shocked the group. Before any of them could inquire further, Swoop scooped up Kaiba, Koneko, Asia, and Zenobia in his Dinobot mode's claws and flew towards the battlefield. Sean leaped into Windblade's cockpit and the two took off after Swoop. Issy, Riaz, Akano, and Irina looked at each other as Riaz shrugged and said with a smile, "Well, let's get going then after all. Swoop just kidnapped 4 of my precious servants." Issy activated his scale mail armor. Irina manifested her halo and angel wings, and both Riaz and Akano brought out their wings. Ross Weiss had decided earlier to ride in Windblade's cockpit with Sean, and all of them headed to the residential area to face the Decepticons. Meanwhile, 10 minutes later at the safe zone, your choice, battlefield, Wheeljack had just arrived at the designated safe zone. Seeing Skylynx was already there, obliterating swaths of Decepti drones and several large Insecticon warriors. "Had enough, you infernal Insecticon weaklings," Skylynx shouted at whatever survivors were hiding behind cover. One Insecticon screeched loudly in an unsettling, otherworldly sound that, at best, is similar to a hissing cockroach. The Insecticon in question was foolish enough to make itself a target and was blasted to pieces by Skylynx's cannons. "I figured that would have been your response. Honestly, it is hard for a genius like myself to be surrounded by beasts and machines dumber than wild animals." Skylynx spoke to himself. Wheeljack whistled and replied, "Hope you weren't talking about us, for your sake, Lynxy." Skylynx looked down to his massive feet and saw the inventor or wrecker beside them. And beside Wheeljack's own feet, Skylynx saw that Twilight and Rosa accompanied Wheeljack, and shielded the 3 from several weapons fired by the enemy with his wings. What brings an ex-wrecker mechanic, the Princess of Friendship, and an accomplished Pokémon trainer here? Skylynx asked, to which Twilight answered while blasting several drones with her magic. "Sean said we should establish a safe zone here for civilians and anyone injured because of the Decepticons' attack." Twilight revealed her sword from its sheath and bisected a large Decepti drone, and Rosa added while setting another on fire, "Think someone of your talents can clear up the pests so that..." Skylynx interrupted as he fired a missile that torched several Insecticons. "So that Optimus and the other Autobots can establish a perimeter for the civilians to feel safe. Who do you think I am, ladies? I am Skylynx. I make the impossible possible. Of course, I can do it." Wheeljack chuckled as he fired rockets at the swarm. "Then do it, fancy wings. I know from Nebulan Customs that it is normally rude to keep ladies waiting." Skylynx sighed while muttering under his breath that no one admires his magnificence, and got to work clearing out Decepti drones and Insecticon mutants with his more powerful weapons. And to ensure the job is done much faster, he split into his 2-component drones, his Lynx mode and his Dino Bird mode, both dealing out torrents of firepower that turned his opponents into piles of melted scrap. The surviving drones and Insecticons fled from the little plaza, to which they began searching for and rescuing any civilians in the wreckage. Some of the Underworld's guards and soldiers assisted the 450-4 in the effort of rescuing. Your choice. Transformers... It was after Rosa and Skylynx helped rescue several people trapped under a collapsed building that they heard the familiar sound of a ground bridge opening. Rosa looked over as she was tending to a mother and her young son, saying, "About time Optimus and the others got here." From the portal, Optimus Prime arrived in his flat-nosed semi-truck form, pulling a long trailer with the Autobot insignia proudly displayed on its sides. Several other vehicles of land and air soared through the portal, along with several angels and fallen angels decked out in armor, ready for battle. Optimus transformed into his bot mode, as Rosa helped the mother to a more open area to better treat her wounds. Closer to Optimus as he gave the orders, Rosa said, "Hey Optimus, didn't you ever think that with that Darkhold book, that the Decepticons are privy to entrances no one even knew existed?" Perceptor came running out as the trainer said that and exclaimed, "Curses. I should have anticipated that Megatron would resort to such a manner." Jetfire landed as he let out several of the superheroes accompanying the Autobots. Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Cyborg, Blue Beetle, Black Widow, and Power Girl if you're wondering. He transformed as he replied to Perceptor, "To be honest, we were more concerned about Megatron possessing the book's good counterpart and 5 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, so we can be forgiven for forgetting the Darkhold." Skylynx's shuttle half-landed as the lieutenant said to Optimus, that Hashimoto could ordered Wheeljack and those 2 ladies to establish a safe zone here for the civilians and injured, much like what Ratchet established the first time Megatron attacked the Underworld. Good for him, he thought about this fast enough. This square is an ideal location to set up an evacuation zone, Surzik said as he and his queen appeared beside the Autobot commander. Optimus nodded as he replied to both him and Skylynx. He's always been quick to come up with a plan. Where is he? And is he Hudu for that matter? Right now, Twilight answered. He's with First Aid and Search and Rescue, acting as First Aid's bodyguard. Then, let me and Mondo Boobs help him out. Sparky, you're with us too, Iron Man said as he, Power Girl who shot the Avenger, really? Kind of look. And Blue Beetle took off. Cyborg said, I'll try to use the frequencies we have in our databanks to try and find where this hidden passageway the Decepticons are using to enter the underworld, and possibly close it in their ugly faces. Optimus nodded and said, Then do so, Cyborg. I'll have Bulkhead and Smokescreen cover you. Skylynx, search for Ria's Gremory and her team and cover them. Pyromagna and her team will accompany you, Skylynx replied as he transformed into his space shuttle and carrier form. On it, Optimus. All right, ladies, pile in and hold on to something. I am, as Sonic says, gonna go fast. Skylynx took off as the aforementioned hedgehog shouted, I don't say that. It's gotta go fast, not gonna go fast, if anything. Optimus thought as Sonic took off to help with the rescue efforts. There is no doubt, there is a traitor in our midst. The past several months have proven that, but who is it? Optimus felt in his spark, a kind of voice telling him to head into town. He recognized the feeling as being the same as when he connects to Primus, the creator god of all Transformers. He was never wrong to trust this feeling. The matrix of leadership has always guided him true, and he is not going to doubt it now. Meanwhile, with Ria's Gremory's group, your choice, battle, is he obliterated scores of Decepti drones with his dragon shot blasts. The Autobots and Ross Weiss took care of the Decepticons and Insecticon clones and kept them from the teenagers. Unfortunately for the girls in the group, this was their first in-person encounter with the Insecticons, and they really didn't like them. Shudder. I knew I would hate the Insecticons, Zenobia stated as she tore the head off one of the Decepti drones. They're horrifying in appearance. They make those unpleasant sounds, and they're just like bugs if they were the size of trucks. One of the Insecticons charged at Zenobia, letting out a loud whooping cry as it opened its crooked maw, but Swoop tackled it and thrust his weapon, a Celsius sword, into its brain module. Asia helped an older gentleman up on his feet, as she regretfully replied, Yes, I hate to admit it, but I share Zenovia's sentiments with the Insecticons, but I still hope we could get along with them, because they've already been through enough. If what you bots say about them is true regarding Shockwave, DO02 said as she kicked one Vehicon trooper hard enough to crash through 7 city blocks. Well, aside from Bob, Sunstraker's pet Insecticons are kinda like a mix between those creatures you call cockroaches and hydras, but 10 times worse. They don't stay down. And if you manage to succeed in terminating one of them, a dozen show up to replace the fallen ones. Koneko snarked as she punched a large Decepti drone into the mouth of an Insecticon, making the clone choke. Sounds like Pervert's legacy. Knock one down, more replace them. Issy took offense at that. Hey, it's not my fault that I like ammo storage. Transformers. Fall of Cybertron. Incoming. One of the Vehicons shouted as he and the other Vehicons transformed and fled the battlefield. Everyone was alerted by Swoop as he pointed to the sky, and to everyone's bewilderment, they saw a tower the size of a city block falling towards them. Isn't that Ria's thought as her eyes narrowed in focus on the falling tower? My father's storage facility. Everyone got out of the way as, like a meteor, the tower crashed in the district and flattened hundreds of buildings into piles of indiscernible rubble, and a massive crater was left. Ria's and the other Occult Research Club members were dumbfounded by the destruction given. Wheeljack was carried by Swoop and observed the damage and said with certainty, This is definitely Bruticus' handiwork. Only a moron like him is strong enough to hoist a building that large and have it create meteoritic destruction. Who's Bruticus? Akano asked, her face looking eager to punish the Decepticon responsible for this. Windblade answered Akano's question. Way too out of your league to face. Akano, DO02 added. You thought Megatron was strong. Bruticus makes him look pathetically wimpy by comparison. In the strength department, he's the combined form of the 5 Combaticons, a team of military juggernauts led by the tactically intelligent Onslaught, and just my luck. I found a bunch of auto bugs to crunch under my feet. A loud and brutish voice sounded nearby. causing everyone to turn in the direction the sound came from, and they beheld the sight of a truly massive robot with a rocket and helicopter for arms, a jeep and tank for legs, and an anti-aircraft truck for a torso. All vehicles Issy noticed were military grade, meaning this guy packs some serious firepower. It then clicked in his mind, and everyone else's they've heard of Bruticus before. He was the one who had fought Tannen during the Decepticons' first attack in the underworld. This gigantic Decepticon must be Bruticus. Time to crush some Autobots. Bruticus exclaimed as he used his massive fist like a hammer. Everyone got clear as when the Combiner's fist collided with the ground. It sent shockwaves that made it rain rubble for a good 2 minutes. DOO2, Windblade, and Swoop blasted Bruticus' head, which harmlessly bounced off to distract the Combiner. Issy, Riaz, Akano, Irina, and Ross Weiss all ready to throw their ranged attacks to help the Autobots fight this Titan. But Windblade shouted, "No, leave this guy to us. B, help them out." I saw grunt a horde of those Decepti drones, heading for that heavily fortified building a few clicks northeast of our position. Swoop added in a caveman dialect, most likely for the lols. "Swoop say go now." Me and others, Ptheeth, "I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. Just go. We can handle ugly here, no problem." Bumblebee beeped and blipped to the ORC to hurry along and stop whatever it is they're after, leaving just 3 little but highly skilled Autobots to face Bruticus and whatever Decepticon forces remained behind. The group's escape didn't go unnoticed, as 5 jet vehicons and a leaper took off after them. Windblade used her sword to block another one of Bruticus' shockwaves and barely hung on long enough to allow Swoop to nail the Gestal in the face with his powerful rockets. DOO2 noticed the cons going after the Occult Research Club, and said, "I'm going after those cons that took off after the kids." Wait was all Windblade could reply after DOO2 transformed into her speed car form and drove off with a roar of her engines. The city speaker sighed in annoyance as it was now Swoop and herself fending off the dim-witted Gestal and around 1,000 enemies. 2 versus 1,200. Not good odds even with the best flyer who's a Dinobot and a city speaker. But fate smiled on them as the cavalry arrived in the form of Skylynx, 3 of the 6 Dinobots Grimlock, Slash, and Snarl, Jetfire, RC, a 903, the entire Torchbearers team, Surzix and Graphia, several Devils, and a trio of superheroes consisting of Spider-Man, Power Girl, and Iron Man. Fear not, Swoop. Windblade. Superior firepower has just arrived, Skylynx said as he tackled or blasted Bruticus several yards from the 2 Autobots. A 903 fired his cluster bombs at the hordes and decimated the Decepticons' forces alongside Iron Man using his full arsenal to further disrupt the platoon's order. Power Girl and Spider-Man ganged up on 3 Leapercons armed with kryptonite weapons, the New Yorker whipping his web solution onto the Leaper's claws, while the Kryptonian crashed into their backs. RC came in hot and with Surzix and Graphia unleashed a veritable tornado of carnage on any Vehicon troopers or Eggman's drones in their path. Then came the Insecticon horde, a deafening cacophony of buzzing wings amidst the thrall of the clones' whooping cries. Grimlock and Snarl wasted no time in unleashing a torrent of flames in their dinosaur modes. Slash brought out her Energon knives and proceeded to cut and slash at the cons with accuracy and speed greater than any ninja could ever hope to achieve. Jetfire blasted some of the larger drones with his powerful firearms, some of which melted holes in their hulls, while both Surzix and Graphia finished them off. The Torchbearers remained in their individual forms to help Skylynx fight the Combaticon Gestal. They don't need Victorian to disorient and distract Bruticus, firing at his face, hands, feet, and butt from all directions. Hold on, Spidey. This wrecker's got some hurt to give to those lousy cons. RC shouted as she activated her left arm's Energon blade, and a blaster in her right arm. He took one of the Leapers out of the fight, allowing Superman's cousin to finish off the other 2. Power Girl asked in a semi-jovial manner, "Got our backs, Smasher?" "Yeah," RC replied as she blasted a hole through a Vehicon's spark chamber. "And isn't Smasher Banner's call sign? Not mine. Guys," Spider-Man said as he pointed. "Those Decepticons we just beat. Something is telling me that they're not the best they have to offer." Power Girl asked her fellow superpowered peer, "What makes you say that? Webs?" A 903 answered for the web slinger. How about them? End of the video. Link down to the comments if you want to read the rest of the story. I hope you all enjoy. Goodbye.